your bridge to hope, encouragement, and inspiration. It's Sozo Today with the Bridge FM Morning Crew. Here's Johnny, Jared, and Joel.
We have the best sunrises here in Eastern North Carolina. I mean, it is how awesome is it to live here in Greenville, living here in Washington on the water. Like, it's just a beautiful, beautiful area. Good morning, y'all. Head over to sozotoday.com. Follow along with us this morning as we are talking about what worship can do for you. Our key verse is found in 1 Samuel 16 and verse 13, and it says, "So as David stood there among his brothers, Samuel took the flask of olive oil he had brought and anointed David with the oil. And the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David from that day on. Then Samuel returned to Ramah." And that's, you say, Jared, where are you getting worship out of this key verse? Like, where are you guys, where's that devotion pulling that out of? If you go back and look, Johnny, Samuel comes out to anoint David. David hadn't done anything. David was the absolute least. In fact, when Samuel told Jesse to bring all of his boys and line them up because the Lord was going to anoint one of them, he didn't even bring David. David didn't even make the cut of Jesse's own children. He had nothing going for him except the fact that he was worshiping the Lord.
Yeah, and so when you bring worship into it, it really comes from the chapter prior to, when in this verse, the Lord speaks to Samuel, and he tells Samuel not to weep, not to worry about it. I'm paraphrasing, obviously. When King Saul had just disobeyed and God had had enough, he's like, you know what, this is not my guy anymore. We tried it, Saul, it didn't work. And he tells Samuel, he said, I have found me a man after my heart, after my own heart. I have found me a man after my own heart. And so I remember growing up in church through the years and hearing that verse, and every time I would hear it, and maybe it would be taught this way with that slant that, David was a man after God's own heart. David had this special favor with God and it was almost kind of put out there in a way that it was something special David had that we could never quite attain to. That David was just like, he was God's pick of the litter, where he wasn't his daddy's pick of the litter, Jesse. He was God's, and he had God's special favor for some reason. Now, whenever I heard it, there was an inward little cringe because I'm thinking, wow, I bet that would be really cool. Like, I wish I could. I wish I was a man after God's own heart. But the reality of it is that is not what that verse means at all. The key is in the word after. And if you look up this word after in the original language, it literally means in Hebrew to be in pursuit of. So basically what God is telling Samuel is, Samuel, I have found me a man that is in pursuit of my heart. And that's gonna be the next king. He's gonna be the next king. So the question in the devotion or the statement is, it's really a statement, but it's also a question. What worship can do? What can worship do in your life? And in David's situation, it did some things for him. When he felt rejected, when he felt outcast by his family, and it's obvious that he did, I can just picture it. David would go out on the side of those hills, tending those sheep, and whether he found his harp or his flute or whatever his instrument of choice was that day, he would sing and play melodies to the Lord. He wrote songs, and we call these psalms oftentimes. He wrote music, and he would sing, and he would worship to the Lord. And we know that did two things for David, and it will do two things for us. And that is, it lifted David up. It lifted him up out of maybe the depression or the funk that rejection could bring to one's heart and mind. But it also lifted him up, and because he was in pursuit of God and God's own heart, it elevated him to positions of greatness that he never would have otherwise been qualified to reach. And that was it. And we were talking about this earlier, David. I almost just called you Jesse. Well, I'm there this morning, right? Praise God. So it's like we were talking about this, Jared, and that is that worship can do something for you, in you, and for you that nothing else can. And it's like a company. When when you say you own a company or a business, but you got this person that works with you, and I hate using the word employee. I like talking about people that work with me and not for me. But let's say you got someone that works for you in your company, an employee, and they have your heart. You don't ever have to worry about them going out misrepresenting the company or you as an owner because they have your heart. You can't buy that. You can't buy that. That is special. And it's usually those folks. And back in the day, we would say, yeah, that's a company man. That's just a way of saying that person. They've got the heart of the owner. They got the heart and vision of the company, and it's usually those folks that find position more than just a job. They find positions within the organization because they have the heart of it. Mm-hmm. And here's the same thing. God is saying, listen, I found me a man after he may not be the most qualified. He's not been to management school. He's certainly not qualified in the natural to run a kingdom, but he is in pursuit of my heart. And that's what we can do. We can worship, and the worship we do will lift us up from the inside out, but also on the outside. God brings us into promotion. He brings us into increase because as we have his heart, he can trust us and he can do things in and through us. Mm-hmm. I just was sharing with you, I won't go into detail about a connection that I kind of made for someone. And I could say, well, why didn't I make that connection for myself? Well, I found out, I realized it wasn't about me. It was about this other person. And the question comes to me is, can I be trusted with something like that? Can I be trusted to make a connection for the Lord, be a connector in a puzzle and put two people together that doesn't benefit me in any way whatsoever and be okay with it? And see, if my heart is for him, then the answer is yes. If my heart is for me, then the answer is no. And so when we have the heart of worship, when we have God's heart, man, he can trust us. He can trust us. He can use us. He can do things in and through us. That's amazing.
Absolutely. And so this morning, if you're the quarantine blues are starting to get to you, if you are looking around, and Johnny, you said earlier, and we'll end with this, that religion gives you a list of do's and don'ts, and sometimes that makes you feel defeated. Sometimes it makes you feel inadequate. Sometimes it makes you feel like you just can't ever get there. Know this, that God is after your heart. God is 100%. God looked into David's heart and he knew that he had it. And that was far more important than anything else. Coming up next hour, our next segment, we're going to be talking to Tony Cooper, who's the worship pastor at Temple Church right here in Greenville. We'll see you then.
Your bridge to hope, encouragement, and inspiration. It's Sozo Today with the Bridge FM Morning Crew. Here's Johnny, Jared, and Joel.
Good morning, Washington, Greenville, New Bern. It's 58 degrees. It's 58 degrees, sunny. Going to be a beautiful day today in the 60s. Great day to get out and take that park walk, kayak fishing, or whatever allows you to do some social distancing outdoors. Man, get out and do it. It's going to be a gorgeous day, beautiful day. We are talking about this morning what worship can do. Mm-hmm. What worship can do in your life. What worship can do in you, through you. You got a special guest on the line, Jared.
Yeah, we have Tony Cooper. Tony is the worship pastor at Temple Church here in Greenville. Tony also teaches worship studies at Liberty University, and he teaches music courses at PCC. Tony, good morning.
Hey, everybody. How you guys doing?
Good, man.
So, Tony, good morning, man. So we were thinking this morning, and I know you and I have met before, and you teach at Liberty University online, and you teach worship, right?
Yes, sir.
So when you're teaching worship, how do you teach worship, man? When you say teaching worship, is it all about the mechanics and the notes and the melodies, or is there an attempt or an effort on your part to get your students into the heart of worship?
No, absolutely. That's basically what we do in the online program is we lay that foundation for your theology of worship, exactly who God is, what he desires from us in that worship. And then that determines really, how we operate, why we do the things that we do in worship, in our worship services, but more importantly, in our worship and our personal time when we worship him day in and day out. And, a lot of times people come in to our program and they're looking at, hey, how can I become the next biggest and best worship leader, get my songs on the radio? But we break it down and we say, you know what, first you've got to have a personal walk. We talk about our corporate worship is just an overflow from our private worship. Jeremiah tells us in Lamentations that his mercies are new every morning. So we call that into perspective and say, that doesn't mean we sing new songs per se, literally, but that we understand every morning that God has done something for us. We can look back this week and we can really look, and that is the heart of worship, when we look and we see what God has done for us on our behalf, because we can't.
That's so good, Tony. And y'all, Tony, I go to Temple, and so there is that. So Tony and I are good friends, and we know each other personally, and I know that holds true in Tony's life. And Tony, we have listeners out there now who have been quarantined for 6 weeks. They are staying home, and you would think that would be a great time to really focus on the Lord. But I know in my personal life, it's not always that easy. Sometimes when your routine changes, so does the rest of your routine. So for our listeners this morning, how would you tell them to really concentrate, really spend that time in worship? How can they get to the heart of worship in their home, in their personal life?
Right. I rely on routine quite frequently because I'm a creature of habit. And so when that gets out of whack, it's tough. But we talk about
like us calling you this morning out of the blue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Jared said he's a creature of habit, so this is gonna mess him up a little bit.
Yeah, I'm literally looking at my store right now, waiting for my coffee. So because that's what I do every morning. And so when we determine in our hearts that this is what God desires for us, we have the opportunity and we have the ability, when our schedule gets messed up, when life throws us curves, we understand that this is what is important for us. This is what is important to God in our lives. And so, it's that purpose that I'm going to place this part, even though I may not feel like doing it, even though it may be out of my routine, even though it's not on my schedule right now, that this is what is important, because my heart needs to be connected with God each and every day. And so I'm going to just make a new schedule and say, you know what, because this is important. We talk about a lot of, if it's in your schedule, it's important to you. If it's in your checkbook, it's important to you. And so we look at those things and we determine, hey, what's important to me right now? I may not feel like it, in this quarantine. I really feel like I'm going crazy just sitting here in my house. But God has placed us in these opportunities for specific reasons. And most of those reasons are to bring us closer to him, to make us become more like Christ. So we have to come into this situation going, what is God teaching me right now? What is God going to teach me through this? So I'm going to be diligent, and I'm going to get in his word, and I'm going to worship him this morning. God, what are you going to teach me today?
Mm-hmm. So with that said, Tony, where does spontaneous worship fit in? How is that part of the equation? If it's, I get it. You want to schedule some time, you want to create time, make time purposefully to be with the Lord in his word and in worship. But where's the place for spontaneous worship? And I think about that when David walked into Jerusalem and the ark had come in, and he danced before the Lord. I mean, he just broke out into some worship. I don't know that was scheduled for him. I think that was just like It hit him, man, and he went for it. there's a place for that too, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just like he said, in Lamentations, his mercies are new every morning, and there are always opportunities for us, always opportunities for us to worship. Like you were talking about going kayak fishing or getting outside just to social distance outside. There's opportunities there just to look up and say, man, what a gorgeous day. I'm going to worship the Lord because he has provided this day for me right now. Maybe your kid has come in and drawn you a picture, and it's just wonderful. And God's given you that gift. There's always opportunity. God's provision, and God provides, and God intercedes for us so many ways. And we can just look back and go, wow, I didn't even realize it. And so there's always opportunity, spontaneous worship, to say, you know what, God, in this moment right now, I know you've protected me. I know that you have given me this time, and so I'm going to worship you for that.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
Yeah, Tony, that is so good. And he brought up a good point there too. Sometimes it's you're just walking by, you see your kid. I think you said, you see your kid draw a picture for you, or you walk by and you see a flower. It's the small things, and I think too often we look for a big moment to be like, okay, well, there's that big moment. Now I can worship. But the true heart of that worship is even finding joy and worship in the small things.
Right. Absolutely.
So, Tony, thank you so much for joining us again. Tony's the worship pastor at Temple Church here in Greenville. Tony also teaches online at Liberty and at PCC as well. So, Tony, thank you so much. Have a great day.
Man, God, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Tony. Awesome.
Your bridge to hope, encouragement, and inspiration. It's Sozo Today with the Bridge FM Morning Crew. Here's Johnny, Jared, and Joel.
We have a story of grace. We have an anthem of hope.
8:44, 61 warm degrees out there this morning. Good morning, Washington, Greenville, and New Bern. Thank you for listening for Sozo Today with the Bridge FM Morning Crew. We are talking this morning about worship, what worship can do. And it has been, I tell you this, my attitude or my heart is different now than it was at 6:40 when I walked through the door.
Because you had a bad attitude when you came in.
It wasn't a bad attitude. But it was I didn't, I woke up hard. I slept hard. So when I woke up, you're always kind of a little groggy, but just getting in here and thinking about worship has been great.
Yeah. Even talking about it can change the atmosphere, right?
Absolutely.
Even talking about worship, not even worshiping yet, but just talking about it can really change your attitude, change your heart. Speaking of talking about worship, we got Pastor Chris Lineberger on the line with us. Pastor Chris is the worship pastor at Ignite Church. His brother Jason, lead pastor there. And Pastor Chris, good morning.
Good morning, guys. How are y'all doing this morning?
We are doing good, brother. How about you guys?
We were doing amazing. We had a wonderful Easter weekend.
Tell us about that. What did Ignite do for Easter? How did you guys celebrate?
So we had 4 services on Sunday, and for the last week we've been doing everything video. And whenever they put the in-shelter kind of rule, we stopped meeting live to even film those videos. We just started doing pre-recorded things. We actually had our worship team out in the field. I think we were at least 6 feet apart, so I think we were good there. But we pre-recorded, and we wanted the kind of Sunday morning sunrise feel, and so we recorded everything outside. And then our lead pastor, Jason, went back to our home church in Williamston, and since that was our tradition of going to church, he kind of mixed that in. So we had some outdoor worship, we had some traditional preaching, but we all did it through video, and so we had an incredible response.
That's awesome.
It was wonderful, but very different.
Yeah, we're all looking forward to being back to church as we are accustomed to, but we've had to make the most of it during this time. And I follow you guys online. I follow you on Facebook, and you guys have done a good job of in this season, and you've made the most of it. That you're doing daily videos. I think they're daily or they're pretty routine with Pastor Jason, and I've seen stuff that you put out there, and you still got to create and supply some sustenance for your folks, don't you?
Yeah, completely. It's our responsibility to shepherd the flock and also get the word out of the gospel to others. And now more people are online than ever because they have to be. That's where their entertainment is. That's also where their news is. And now, as churches, we want to step up. We also want to share the good news through that. And so every day that we can encourage people, lead them in worship, guide them to the word, that's what we're going to do. And I think God's given us the platform and the ability to do that. So we're going to do it as long as we can.
Yeah, and you guys are definitely on the cutting edge of technology in terms of utilizing video and sound. But, a lot of churches have never used this before that have had to do it because, to reach their congregation. So in some ways, this has been a good thing. I mean, this has been one of those moments where what the enemy has meant for evil, the Lord has turned for good, and it's taken churches that would not normally have any online presence, and they're having to get out there.
Exactly. We've actually been helping film 5 churches just because they don't have any of the equipment. We just said, come in, we'll film you. We'll even help you get your content on Facebook. And all of them have said whenever we do start gathering again in person, they're going to, invest and start streaming their services. So I think everybody's kind of following suit that you can get the gospel, the message out in a bigger way in this day and age through technology. So it's been a really cool thing.
That's fantastic. Well, so we're talking, Pastor Chris, about worship and what worship can do. What worship can do in our lives. What's share with us some of your things and some of your experience when it comes to worship.
For sure. Well, just to break it down for any of your listeners, worship. I heard it once, and it's definitely accurate. You can break it down almost into like worship. What are we giving worth to? What are we giving value to? What are we giving our attention to? And obviously, we know the answer should be to God. He's worthy of all of our praise. And what's so crazy is that when we don't give value to Him, and this happened even to the Pharisees and to the people during Palm Sunday, the Pharisees were mad, and they said, hey, you need to tell your people to be quiet and stop praising God. And what did Jesus say? He said, if they don't praise me, even the rocks will cry out. And so He deserves our praise. He deserves everything that we can give to Him. And to me, I tell people that worship, it reminds us of who God is and what He has done. The reason why we worship is because it is out of response. And first, it's just because of who He is. Let's not even think about what He's done. Let's just think about who He is. He's perfect. He's powerful. He was here before any of us. He is creator. He is loving. He is merciful. But He's also a judge as well. And so He deserves it just because of who He is. And then when we engage in worship and we sing the songs and we give Him that praise, it also reminds us of what He's done. And obviously we know that He sent Jesus for us all. Not only did He make everything, but He gave the ultimate sacrifice. And so if we can just be reminded of those two things, that He deserves it because of what He's done and because of who He is, I feel like it sets our heart as believers and as people. Now God is in His right place, and we just get to respond to Him. And so when we do speak the promises of God and the truths of God out, whether it's with other believers or just in a kind of a closet by ourselves or in our car, it gets our heart in tune with who God is and who He wants us to be. And so it has the power, honestly, to change everything, because I think when we engage in worship, we get a piece of what heaven is really like, and honestly what God intended the Garden of Eden to be like, and that is to be in perfect relationship, in perfect unity with Him.
Yeah, that's so good. That is so good. So this is Jared, and I got a quick question for you. I know my dad's a pastor, and for him, him and I have talked a lot about the differences he faces when he's preaching into a camera versus preaching in an audience where you just kind of you feed off of the Spirit moving among the people and you see their faces. So as a worship leader, man, as you guys get up there on stage, you lead in worship, and I know there's that joy, there's that power that comes in seeing other people worshiping along with you. How have you maintained that spirit of worship without having, the corporate gathering for you to feed off of?
For sure. Well, it's funny, even when we have been gathering like in the past before all this stuff happened, I tell all of our team leaders that are on the worship team, I tell them, I said, guys, this platform that, being on stage, I said, this is not, being on this platform does not create the presence of God just because it's a platform. I said, if you're going to be a worship leader here, you need to be in the presence of God at home, in the car, in your backyard, take a walk, and give Him glory. I said, because that is where really I think your cup is filled and overflowed. And if you can get in the presence of God when you are alone, then when you come on the platform, then it's just an outpouring of your time that you spent with Jesus. So it's not like, I need to get in performance mode. And so because of that, it's helped us, because in front of the camera, yes, it's weird. You're not seeing other people raise their hands. You just have to literally be in tune with what God has done and who He is. And I tell our people, look, I said, the halls of heaven right now, with people in their homes, are as full, I think, as they've ever been with the sound of praise, because people around the world, they have to be, it has to be a personal thing. You know what I'm saying? If I'm at home with my kids running wild, but now this program comes on TV and they're telling me to engage in worship, I have to be able to shut my outside stuff off so that I can engage with God. And I think people are doing that more than they've ever done. And so as we're leading to a camera, I tell people, imagine kids and families lifting their hands. I said, if you can imagine that, because I believe that's what God sees, I believe it leads us. Guys, I'm about to get emotional here because, like, you can tell I'm already getting there right now, because I visually see that really God's name is being lifted up more than ever. And so as I encourage our worship leaders to think about that, I think it has brought us to a place where we really can have a real worship service to a camera.
That's good.
That's good. Pastor Chris, that's very similar to what Pastor Todd talked about earlier. Pastor Tony, when he talked about worship has to start from the inside of us and not when you get on stage. And so that's very powerful. Hey, so listen, we know that everybody listening can be a worshiper. We know that that within us there's a God spot, and it's created to worship the Lord. Would you close us out right now in prayer and just pray for our listeners, maybe those who have never, maybe they don't even feel like, man, I don't know about this worship. I want to do it, and I just don't know. I'm not comfortable. Would you pray for folks listening, maybe those that are comfortable in worship, maybe those that aren't, that worship would go to a whole new place in this season? Would you pray with us, if you will?
Yes, definitely. God, we just love you so much, and we thank you, Lord, that you have even given us the ability to come into your presence. You've given us this relationship through your Son, Lord, that we have access to speak, to sing, to bow down before you, and we are so grateful and thankful for it. We don't deserve it, but you just give it to us. And God, you long for us, you long for your children to come into your lap and to praise you and to thank you and to love you. And so that's what we're doing even this morning right now. And God, I would encourage that every listener would understand that there's not an equation of what you have to do or what you have to say or what posture with your hands up, your hands down, on the ground, or in the couch. It does not matter, God. All you want to do is hear your children lift up your name, and you long for us to cry out to you, God. So I encourage people, even if it's awkward, Father, Lord, that they would let go of the awkwardness. Even if it's different, that they would let go of the difference. Even if they don't like the sound of their own voice, that, Father, all those distractions would go away, and that maybe for the first time, whenever the radio starts playing again, God, this morning in their car, that they would sing to you, that they would not just listen to the song, but they would sing it out, Father, Lord. They would think about the promises that they're hearing, and they would see you and be reminded of what you've done for us, God, and that we would all long for you more, and that, God, that you would show us at the church that as believers we are stronger than ever, even though we are meeting in homes around the world, Father, Lord, and believe that you're going to turn crisis into revival. And I pray that you would put that truth in our hearts. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Chris Lineberger, Ignite Church. Hey, thank you for tuning in with us today. God is so good. Thank you for listening. Join us tomorrow, Sozo Today.